Hi everyone, welcome. As people continue to roll in, we'll just kind of get started here. Um, we're so grateful to Robert Farley for joining us and being part of this collaboration with Notre Dame Catholic Indian Schools and being able to American Indian Catholic Schools Network and USCCB to be able to share a little bit about um, online child exploitation, recruitment, kind of the different trends that we've been seeing from the previous presentations and kind of summing everything up. Again, this is recorded for those that can't attend, and we'll be able to send that out. So Robert Hugh Farley, MS, is the principal of Farley International, retired as the commanding officer of the Cook County Sheriff's Police Child Exploitation Unit in Chicago. As a highly decorated detective, unit supervisor, and deputy U.S. Marshal, he has over 28 years of experience investigating and supervising all aspects of child abuse crimes, from sexual abuse to child homicide. In 2007, Robert supervised the internal investigation following sexual abuse allegations at Oprah Winfrey's School for Girls in South Africa. In 2011, Robert became the first police officer to conduct a child sex abuse training seminar for the clergy in the Vatican in Rome. In 2012, he collaborated with the Boy Scouts of America following the court-ordered release of the ineligible volunteer, or so-called perversion files. In 2015 and 2018, he returned back to the Vatican in Rome to conduct child sexual abuse training for the clergy, and he has also been a consultant for the Virtues program since 2004. As an internationally recognized expert consultant, author, and instructor in child abuse investigation techniques, Robert has conducted thousands of child abuse investigation training seminars for the U.S. Department of Justice, the FBI, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, in all 50 of the United States and in 22 different countries for Interpol. As a result of his unique training curriculum, the numerous investigative techniques he developed have been implemented by thousands of police departments, child protection agencies, child advocacy centers, MDTs, and prosecutors throughout the world. We're so grateful to have you and your insight today and to be able to share a little bit more, specifically within the Native and Indigenous community, as we expand some more programs and educate about the issue that we see. Thanks so much. You have the floor, Robert.
Okay. No, thank you for the very nice long introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. What I'm going to be talking about today is online child sexual exploitation, recruitment, and abuse within the Native communities. And the way I'm going to do it is from my own experience dealing with this issue, not only in the Chicago area, but also conducting training for Native communities, Oklahoma, Alaska, a multitude of different places, Federal Tribal Police Academy in Marana, Arizona, and that. So I have an idea of some of the issues that you guys have, and what I'm going to try and do is expand on that. I've got a PowerPoint presentation, and we can kind of follow along with it as we're going along. So let me just click over here and get this going. Okay. Every time I do a training, I do a training, as I was telling the police, that I do training about every 2 weeks or so, someplace, but primarily in the United States, in some cases outside the country. I always do a warning. The training that I do specifically is for the investigation of child sexual abuse, child abuse, homicide, issues like that. So this training seminar is of a sexual nature, features graphic illustrations and strong language. This vivid material is used to identify, investigate, and prosecute child abuse and child sexual exploitation. Okay, now, I don't have to dwell on this slide because I had that very nice introduction, but I spent 30 years on the Cook County Sheriff's Police Department. If you're not familiar with our department, it's the second largest sheriff's department in the United States, with Los Angeles being the largest. The city of Chicago is just a tiny little portion of Cook County. So that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit as we begin my own experience and then expanding on that with other experiences that I've had. Now, one of the things that wasn't said in that very nice introduction is before I got on the police department, a long, long time ago, I was a high school history teacher at Marist High School, which is a Catholic high school on the south side of Chicago. So every time I do a presentation, no matter where it's at, even in the different countries I've been in, I always have to import, only because I was a history teacher, a little bit of history. So what I'm going to try and do is that today by starting off and talking about the origin of Chicago's name. The name Chicago derives from a word in the language spoken by the Miami and the Illinois peoples, meaning striped skunk. In addition, a spinoff of that word uh, is it would be defined as a stinky weed, and that would be the weed that you see there in the left-hand corner of the slide. Apparently, when Chicago was founded, you had these onion weeds that were growing where the Chicago River dumped into Lake Michigan, and that's the name of Chicago. So I figured I'd share that. Now, Chicago is on Lake Michigan, one of the 5 Great Lakes. There's a big difference between the north side of Chicago and the south side of Chicago. On the north side of Chicago, you have the Chicago Cubs. On the south side, you have the Chicago White Sox. On the north side of Chicago, you have what they call Chicago pizza, but it isn't Chicago pizza. It's this deep dish gunk. On the south side of Chicago, you have thin cracker crisp pizza, and that's sometimes called the tavern style. So I grew up on the south side of Chicago. And as a result, when I started on the police department, I primarily investigated crimes against children on the south side. So where you see where that red line is dividing the two, that's the Eisenhower Expressway that goes all the way from the border of Chicago all the way into Lake Michigan. There is no east side. East side is Lake Michigan. So if someone says it from the east side, they're lying. It's north side and south side. Now, having said that, we investigated, when I got in the police department, I got promoted, we investigated a crime called child pornography. One of the problems with the term child pornography is it doesn't really tell you what the crime is. The statutes or the federal code that some of you folks would be involved with, Title 18, 2053, they have the term child pornography. But because it has that term pornography in it, it doesn't make it sound as dirty as it is. So we began investigating on the south side child pornography cases. When the cameras changed to digital, it allowed the child pornographers to easily not only take pictures, not have to bring them into the Walgreens or the Walmart to have them processed or that, but then to send them to other people who are interested in this type of material. Now, as an example, we arrested a fellow just before I retired, a fellow who was a dad. He was sexually abusing his 4.5-month-old baby and photographing himself doing it, and then trading these photos with other people. Now, having said that, at that time, I retired. The trial was going on. I had just been teaching in Scotland Yard in London, and I learned they don't use that term, child pornography. They call it child abuse images. When I began working for Interpol, when I retired from the police department, I began working for Interpol and going to all these other countries. I learned Interpol doesn't call it child pornography because that word pornography doesn't make it sound so dirty like it really is. And they use the term child abuse images. Now, let's fast forward to the last maybe 3-4 years. The different technology companies, Apple, Microsoft, and that, they began taking a stand against child pornography being transmitted. And they then came up with the term child sexual abuse material, or as you see in parenthesis there, CSAM. So that's where that term came from. Now, the way it's essentially defined is it's a visual depiction of a minor, which means under 18 years of age, that is, or by simulation appears to be engaged in sexually explicit conduct or the lewd exhibition of the genitals. So what that means, that back part, the lewd exhibition of the genitals, the naked pictures of children, in some cases, are not child pornography. They have to focus in on the genitals and that to get the actual crime of child pornography. So that's what we began doing. We began locking people up for manufacturing and distributing child pornography. Now, at this point, I was detailed from the Cook County Sheriff's Police to a unit that was created in Chicago called the Federal Child Exploitation Strike Force. And this was made up of the Sheriff's Police, the Chicago Police, the FBI, and the US Postal Inspectors. And we did something unique. Nobody had ever done it before. Nobody ever did it since. We worked undercover as pedophiles. So there's this underground culture of pedophiles that are all interested in this type of material, having sex with kids, but also having this type of material distributed, manufactured, and such like that. One of the things we initially did when I started working in the strike force, now everybody who was like me, a local officer, was cross-deputized as a deputy United States Marshal. We worked a three-state area: Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin. Initially, the strike force focused in on female child prostitutes who were working on the street, and these are children working on the street on the north side of Chicago. The boys were working more in the downtown area, the north end of the downtown area, but we were focusing in on the little girls on the north side of Chicago. And that's when I was shocked. I don't know, not shocked, but surprised to learn that we have a large Native American population on the north side. And again, I had worked only on the south side, and didn't cross that big red line. I'm now working on the north side, and that's when I learned that some of these little girls that we were encountering as prostitutes were from various tribes, and that led me to actually go to the American Indian Center of Chicago, which apparently had been around since 1953. So primarily what we were doing was, if you look at the map of Chicago and you see where I just threw that arrow up there, this is the area that the people were living in. People tend to group by their descendants, by their origins and such. The area that I lived in Chicago, on the southwest side of Chicago, was all Irish, Polish, and Lithuanians. Yeah. But up here, we have Native Americans from a variety of different tribes and nations and such. So what we would do is set up stings, and we would then be solicited by a child on the street. Instead of arresting the child, what we would do is take the child prostitute into protective custody. We would relocate the child to a safe place. The Catholic Church in Chicago, the Archdiocese of Chicago, had set up what was initially a orphanage, but then it was a home for children called Maryville on the northwest side. We would bring the kids there to this safe place, and rather than, again, arresting them, we would turn them over to the Department of Children and Family Services, or what they called CPS in the state of Illinois. In addition, from these kids, we were identifying people that were pimping children. In addition to that, we were identifying pedophiles and Johns. That's the term when a person solicits a prostitute, that's a term the prostitutes use, that were manufacturing or distributing child pornography. So that's what we were focusing in on. We were taking these little girls into protective custody and then questioning them. Who are the people that were taking pictures of you? Who are the people that are soliciting you for sex? And they were giving us leads so we could go and we could work these cases. Okay, having said that, let's now talk about some of the terms that are out there, some of the different terms. So child sex trafficking, the way it's defined, and I'm using the U.S. Department of Justice as my site for these different terms. Child sex trafficking refers to recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, obtaining, patronizing, or soliciting of a minor, again, under 18 years of age, for the purpose of a commercial sex act. Now, at this point, we have to identify what a commercial sex act is. A commercial sex act is defined as any sexual act in exchange for something of value such as food, shelter, gifts, or clothing. As an example of this, when we were doing stings on the internet, when I went back and I created our child exploitation unit, and we were doing the stuff that you would see on To Catch a Predator, but we were doing this long before that. We had an individual that was a government official from Northern Ireland, flew to Chicago. He was on his way to the White House as part of the peace accord between the Catholics that were fighting with the Protestants in Northern Ireland. and he came to Chicago to have sex with a 12-year-old girl. And he brought with her what he called a claddagh ring. Claddagh is a type of ring. It's got a heart on it, a couple of hearts on it. It's a gold ring. He brought this as a gift for the girl. And by bringing that, then he changed his crime from solicitation to a commercial sex act because he's offering who he believes is a child this type of gift. Okay, now, at this point, the government put together a program called the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. The government is, probably many of you know, are always abbreviating everything, so it's TVPA. And the way it's defined is human trafficking is inducing someone to perform a commercial sex act through force, fraud, or coercion. However, if the person is under 18, they're considered a victim of human trafficking, regardless of whether force, fraud, or coercion was even used. Okay, now, this law was updated actually in 2023. They expanded the national hotline, and this is the hotline if you want to report child sex trafficking. In addition, they ordered all of these different military installations. They ordered government installations to have a placard with this phone number on it, just to make people aware that there's help out there for this particular type of crime. Okay, now, who are the victims? Who are the victims? If you're looking for the victims, some of them could be kids that you're dealing with in the schools. So what they've seen is with these type of children that are trafficked, you have a low self-esteem or lack of self-esteem. The kids are coming from poverty. And I've seen from conducting the training in many locations that probably you folks are dealing with, you've got this poverty. You've got homelessness or kids going from place to place to place to place. The kids, what they have found is many of these children have previously been sexually abused, okay? And they're being raised in a CPS, that means Child Protective Service, or a foster care system. So that's who these victims are. And these are some of the vulnerability factors that they have seen with this type of victimization. Now, the kids, what they're going to do, they're going to fall prey to the traffickers, who are then going to lure them with offers of food, alcohol, or drugs. They're going to offer them clothes, new clothes, or nice shoes. We had a fella here in Chicago that worked, he was a doctor. And a medical doctor, and he was offering boys new Nikes to induce them to have sex with them and that. So that would be a type of thing that you would see with that. Money, offering them money. Friendship, they're trying to befriend him, but it's like the wolf in sheep's clothing. There's always a gimmick or a catch to it. Love and a promise of a better life, or seemingly, in some cases, what we've seen is just a safe place to sleep. So that's what the kids are falling for, dealing with the traffickers and what they're offering. Okay, now, there's a variety of child sex trafficking. Before we get into the online stuff, there's a variety of child sex trafficking that's out there. So you first of all have what's called the pimp controlled trafficking. And what that means is the child is trafficked by an unrelated individual. It's either a male or a female. This person often develops an intentional relationship with the child, which is later used as leverage in the exploitation. Okay, now, where does this happen? In many cases, bus stations. We've got two airports. It doesn't happen at O'Hare Airport, doesn't happen at Midway Airport. We've got 3 different train stations downtown. It doesn't happen at the train stations, but where we saw it happening is the bus stations. On the top is the old Greyhound bus station that was in downtown Chicago. They wrecked that. They then built the bus station, Greyhound bus station. Below that, that's on the south end of the downtown area. And what you would see there are runaways and throwaways. In some cases, you may have kids that are fleeing. They don't have money. In some cases, they have talked with people online. People will go and get a prepaid ticket for them, at the bus station. So we would see the kids not leaving, we would see the kids coming into Chicago, and that from all different places around the country. And that, so bus station, just a horrible, horrible place for trafficking for kids. Now, insofar as the pimp related ones, um, Jimmy Buffett, who recently died. Jimmy Buffett had a song called Fins. And as you're looking at the song, it says, above it, land sharks. And that's what the pimps are. They are literally land sharks. But in his songs, he was talking about in a bar. And he says, can't you feel them circling, honey? Can't you feel them swimming around? You got fins to the left, fins to the right. You're the only bait in town. You got fins to the left, fins to the right. You're the only girl in town. And that's what we would see. We could go down to one of the bus stations and we could literally see these people offering the runaways or the throwaways. Let me just define what a throwaway is. First of all, a runaway, a child is run away from a school, a child is run away from a house, a child is run away from a family, or in some cases you get kids, they're thrown out. And that's what a throwaway is. And you would see these kids coming out of the bus stations. You would have these individuals there offering to carry their bag, offering to pull their roller bag, and that it was just like the Jimmy Buffett song. You could literally see them, these land sharks, preying on these innocent kids. And in most cases, they were taking them to the south side of Chicago to the housing projects that would have been down there before they would have torn them down. Okay, now we have another type of child sex trafficking, and that's going to be gang controlled trafficking. And that's oftentimes with drugs or the power of the gangs, because the gangs often deal with drugs. The child is trafficked by a member of a gang or trafficked by the gang. The gangs leverage their organizational structure, violence, and local, national, international networks to instill fear and loyalty in the child victim. You have then another type of sex trafficking, and that's familial trafficking. And that means the child is being trafficked by a relative or a person who is perceived by the child to be a family member, such as individuals who are referred to as an auntie or calling someone who's an uncle. They're not related. They're just kind of there. They're not directly related to the kids. And then these individuals take advantage of the children, trafficking them. The fourth type that you're going to see is the buyer perpetrated trafficking. And with that, what you're going to see with that is the child is being trafficked, but does not have a trafficker. Instead, what you're going to see is the buyer is directly exploiting the child's vulnerabilities by offering money, food, and or shelter in exchange for the sexual exploitation. And that would be, in some of the cases, what we would see with the child prostitutes up on the north side of Chicago. And that they, in many cases, didn't have a pimp. In some cases did, but in many cases didn't. And you would have these people that were taking advantage of the kids and exploiting them. Okay, now let's talk about the role of technology involved in this. So, insofar as the role of technology, child sex trafficking has transformed itself into a new business model in which the online component is an essential part of the victim's MO. That's a police law enforcement term that stands for modus operandi. And that, in other words, how the things work. That's what it would be. And just like we saw when you switched from 35 millimeter photos to digital photos, just like when you switched from 8 millimeter movies to digital movies, it exploded. And the same thing happened with child sex trafficking. Because now, all of a sudden, you've got the ability where the traffickers can recruit and exploit the victims without face-to-face, in-person interaction. And because they're doing this online, because they're doing this in a secretive type of way, they're reducing the risk of themselves being tracked by law enforcement. When we started our exploitation unit, we've got a 6-person unit, and that we're handling the county of Cook, the city of Chicago, we're covering all these counties around it. We're the only ones. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children would be sending us tips and I'd say that's like 5 counties over. That's nowhere near Cook County. They go, you're it. And this is one of the problems because after 9/11, the FBI pulled back on what they were doing with child sexual exploitation, and everything went to anti-terrorism and that. So you don't have that many people that are working this type of online crime, online sexual exploitation. Now, the role of technology is such that the social media platforms are used as virtual catalogs by traffickers to identify new victims and then develop their grooming strategies. Grooming is lowering the inhibitions of a child. One of the problems that I had when I did international training is the term grooming does not translate at all well. In France, when I was in Interpol's headquarters in Lyon, France, and this is the World Police Organization, and that the term grooming does not translate into French because when they hear the term grooming, they think of brushing your hair or brushing your teeth. And it's not what we here in the United States think of with grooming, lowering the inhibitions of the child, lowering the inhibitions of the family so that ultimately the child can be sexually abused. Okay, now the problem that you have for the kids, for the families, is the kids publish everything. There's a significant amount of information on the psychological and the personal background of the users. They talk about how they're lonely, how they feel like they're losers, that nobody likes them, that they're ugly, that they have acne and that. And what happens is they publish their education, their family ties, their economic status, their residence, the networks, their schools. I mean, when I was in South Africa, the little girls at Oprah School were talking about their school, and you had people showing up at this gate, trying to meet the little girls. And then not only do they do that, you've got photos, all being published. Okay, so what you want to think with this, the role of technology is different because you've got this online grooming. People think of the kids being kidnapped, and they're not. It rarely happens. What happens is it's this online grooming, lowering the inhibitions of the kids, because what they do is from the profiles and from the informations that are posted, they target their victim. After targeting the victim, they're going to then gain information. They're going to converse with the victim, which means they're going to develop trust. And then what they're looking for is unlimited access. They try and separate the child from their friends. They try and separate the child from their schoolmates. They try and separate the child from their families. They try and do that. So they have this unlimited access. And that's the problem with phones, because like with cyberbullying, it's 24 hours. It used to be if you were being bullied at school, when you went back home, it stopped. And that's the problem with the technology. It's 24 hours. The molesters then play an important role in the child's life. They try to normalize sex by children. They're sexual human beings. Human beings are sexual, and they try to make it a game by showing themselves. They're showing pictures of themselves, doing streaming video of themselves, then asking them for that. And then they want to initiate that sexual contact. As they're doing this, they're trying to maintain control on the victim. Okay, now, as an example, the kid's got a phone. So what are you going to do? You're going to get texts like this. You're so gorgeous. I'm a photographer and can get you a job as a model. Or else they'll send a text like this. Are you a singer? If you come work with me, I can make you famous. I can make you a rapper. That's what kids want. And that. Someone as beautiful as you should be rich. I can make sure you'll never have to worry about money again. I mean, you see these kids on TV waving $100 bills around, standing in front of fancy cars and that. And this is all a ploy to gain access. Now, in addition, what they're going to do is if the kids don't have a phone, the traffickers will get them a phone. They'll send them a phone. And what the kids don't realize is these phones, they're not what they appear to be because they've got GPS software and location sharing applications on the phone, which allows the traffickers to track the kids or to control the movements of the kids and that. Social media is also used as a psychological weapon with traffickers who are threatening, which the term is sextortion. They're threatening the kids that as they were grooming them, they were asking for pictures of the kids scantily clothed. And then they tell the kids that if they don't upload pictures of the children naked, what they're going to do, they're going to post what the pictures they have on there. Or else what they'll do, they'll drop a bot on their device where the kids don't realize that they're in their bedroom, they're taking their clothes off, and it's streaming. It's streaming across the internet. The Internet Watch Foundation, which is the UK's, that would be London's, Great Britain's, it would be the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children here in the United States. In the UK, it's the Internet Watch Foundation. They now say that 1 in 3 child abuse images, remember that's a term for child pornography in London. 1 in 3 child abuse images found online are now selfies, with girls as young as 11 tricked into performing acts during webcam encounters with individuals. Now, what's unusual about this type of crime is the ringleader is, in many cases, not the person that's doing the face-to-face with the kids. What they have found out is it's female offenders. Female offenders have frequently have the lead role with the kids that they're trying to hit on. Often, these female offenders, they themselves have been sexually abused, okay? In addition, they may be in, and I've got in parentheses romantic, but it's an exploitation of them in what they're calling a romantic relationship with the ringleader, who in many cases would be a male, okay? In addition, what they try to do, this woman, this girl, what they try to do is attempt to fill a need with the potential victims. And again, kids are lonely, the kids got acne, the kids got issues, they posted all of these problems online and they jump on that, okay? The recruitment, how's the recruitment? Well, they post enticing job or TikTok or influencer ads online. And the kids all fall for it. They want to make money. And how they're going to do it? Well, they be an influencer. Well, not that many people make money as an influencer and that. Grooming, they present themselves as an example of a success story. And that's what they're telling the kids. You can see me on TikTok. You can see me as an influencer. Look how great I am. You can be like me and that. Physically, they're going to meet the victim. So it's going to be the female rather than the ringleader is going to be meeting the victims. They isolate the victim from their friends and family. They explain the rules. They're now getting into a new family. They explain the rules. They introduce the victims to customers. They then transfer the money that the child has gotten from being sexually abused to the male, in many cases, ringleader. Okay? Now, it's all dealing with this child with that lack of self-esteem or the low self-esteem or no self-esteem. They're going to tell the victim, no one understands you like I do. They're going to provide the victim with new clothes, with jewelry, with electronics, and with money. Probably the biggest thing is, I'm the only one who cares about you. Nobody else does. They've isolated the victim, and this is what they're telling them. I'm the only one who cares about you. I'm the only one who thinks you're important. I'm the only one who loves you. And the kids believe it. The kids believe it. Okay. If you feel that a child is being groomed, if you feel that a child has been the victim of child sexual exploitation, you can make a tip 24 hours a day to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They're based in Alexandria, Virginia. They would be kitty corner to the Pentagon, just outside of Washington, D.C. They're manned, as I said, 24 hours. You have federal law enforcement officers working in there. They have analysts. They can take complaints. If you suspect a child is being trafficked, you can call that phone number and make a complaint there. Probably the most thing that's important is education. I'm going to try to take a couple minutes of questions if you do have any questions. I always try to end on a high note, and that's the way I want to do it, or maybe a happy note, that we all must work together to protect our children and young people like Bradley and Taylor, which would be my grandsons in this photo. My twin grandsons, as I said in the photo. Okay, any questions?
Robert, thank you so much for such an informative presentation. That was really helpful. Yeah, as he said, you guys can put questions in the Q&A, and we can try and answer those. Um, yeah, I wanted to, let's see, any books you would suggest for further reading?
Um, I would go online. There's a lot of materials. There's a lot of materials with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. That's a fabulous organization. You don't have to reinvent anything. I mean, they have tons of publications on there about grooming. I've taught there, oh goodness, probably 25 times at least. But I can't say enough for it. Um, if you're part of the Veritas program, and I know there's a way to even get in there, I usually do an online article on different types of technology and such that's used in the sexual exploitation of children. So I've got years of online articles. If you go through the Virtus program, it consists of a video, there's some discussion, and then there's a second video. I'm in the video, and that. So again, the Virtus website, you can get a lot of good information. Every diocese and archdiocese has to have a safe environment coordinator. And the largest program is probably Virtus. I believe they've got 80% of the market. And it could be higher. I'm guessing, but I'm guessing at least 80.
I
But
think, yeah, I think you're correct on that.
yeah, it's pretty significant. And again, I personally am writing articles about every month. I just recently submitted 2 weeks ago to them uh, on the deep fakes and child molesters, IF, and that I did one probably about 6 weeks ago. I can't remember what it was. I'm drawing a blank for some reason.
Is there a way to see those articles?
You know what? You could call the Virtus help desk. There is a phone
Okay.
number. I know a lot of the dioceses reprint them. I know
Okay.
the parishes reprint them. I mean, you could Google Robert Hugh Farley. I know you're going to get articles that way. Um, the
Okay.
book that I've written have been published by the Department of Justice, and they're for pure investigation techniques, which for some people would be
Sure.
dry. More for awareness, you could just Google Robert Hugh Farley and Virtus, and you could probably get it in that way. But I know there is a phone number for their help desk.
Yeah, great. No, that's helpful. And then, what would you say are some ways that maybe either, I mean, you said you were a grandfather, so, you know, as a parent or as a caregiver, we can, protect kids online. A lot of times we have the conversations of, maybe some like privacy settings on their, if they have a phone, if a kid has a phone, having some more like privacy protections. Or I always find the most effective is to have these conversations with children, right? To educate them as you just did with us, right, on this topic. But could you tell a little bit more about that?
I think, and this is from my perspective as a grandfather. I think one of the most important things is that people, older people, I guess like me, try to stay on top of technology only because you're watching your grandchildren. In some cases, you're raising. I've seen families where the grandparent is raising their daughter's kids, and kids are smart. Kids are really, 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 really smart, and they will try to take advantage of the technology that you have in your house, and I see that with the twins, where my wife, she's an attorney downtown Chicago, but she has a home office, and they go, Nana, can we watch some YouTube videos on your computer? And I immediately go, no. I don't even give my wife a chance to answer because she would fall for it. But the reason I know it is because my daughter has put limits and settings on there so they can only get into the kids' YouTube and they can't get into the adult YouTube. And they get up, if they got on my wife's computer, they would get right into the adult YouTube. And so the kids are always gaming the system. And that's why I think it's so important to be aware of technology, to be aware of what privacy settings are, to be aware. I mean, this phone that we talked about before we started, this phone is dangerous because without privacy settings, you can get into a lot of trouble. And kids are always exploring and they learn from older kids. And I remember the twins when they were in first grade, they had gotten some information on a way to get around some of the privacy settings that with kids YouTube and that. And I said, where did you get that from? And they're so innocent. They tell me they read themselves out. And well, of course, they know I was a police officer too. That's probably the reason. But they said that a kid in their class, his brother's in third grade. And the kid in third grade told the first grader. The first grader then told the twins how to do it. So the kids are always trying to game the system. And I think that parents, in some cases, who grew up with a TV and watching TV shows and that don't realize the computer is not a TV. The computer can do a lot of bad stuff and the kids can get access to a lot of bad stuff. And so I think education is probably the most important thing that you can do, especially as I said, the grandparents. I mean, we babysit the kids. The one twin, before school ended, he got sick, so we had to watch him, and so now he's home with us, and it was an unplanned thing, and that, and you can't just sit him in front of a TV. You can't do that because smart TVs are computers. And you can get YouTube, you can get Netflix, you can get everything on it.
Totally. I think that's such a, they just evolved so much, right? And now you can just do everything, the internet is so fast, and now we have, even more apps and ways to kind of get through things quicker. Another question here was, can you recommend ways to volunteer in local law enforcement offices to be trained to support victims? I'm not sure if
Um,
you know much.
you know what? You would, well, there's a variety of different ways. You can call your local police department. Uh, every police department will have a person that's a juvenile officer, a youth officer. Ask for the youth officer, ask, what can I do? Um, Across the United States, you can reach out to child advocacy centers. Child advocacy centers are where they bring boys and girls for what's called a forensic interview, and they're all across the United States. Within the child advocacy centers, it's a home for what's called the multidisciplinary team. So the multidisciplinary team would be law enforcement, child protective services, you would have the prosecutor, you would have your medical expert, and then you would have social workers. But they're constantly looking for volunteers, for people to volunteer to help with the kids. And I think child advocacy centers might even be better than law enforcement because you're going to be hitting law enforcement because they're part of the team. But I think you can do more for boys and girls that they suspect have been sexually abused or even physically abused by reaching out to a child advocacy center. And again, they're all over the United States. I mean, I was just recently in Oklahoma. I was in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. And I know you have a lot of folks from Indian nations where I've taught in Oklahoma and that, but I was in Bartlesville, and so they're all over the place. So that would be something that they could reach out and volunteer for.
Yeah, absolutely. I was muted there.
Great. That's
Um,
okay.
Great. Thanks so much again, Robert. We're so grateful to be able to partner with you. I'm gonna include it. Let me hold on. I want to see if I can never figure this thing out, you know? Here we are.
The technology constantly changes.
Oh my gosh.
And
Um,
it wasn't until I enhanced the screen that I picked up the share screen.
right, there you go. No, we're really so grateful. I have Will Newkirk here as well. He's the director of the American Indian Catholic Schools Network at Notre Dame. Um, and we've just really enjoyed partnering together to kind of share this information for the Native and Indigenous community and kind of helping with some of this awareness. Will, I don't know if you have anything you want to add.
Yeah, thank you. For some reason, I can't turn my video on. Can you hear me though?
We can hear you.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
that is so
Um,
weird.
no worries. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go.
There we go. Hey,
Flash.
great to
Perfect.
see everyone. Well, hey, and Robert, thank you so much. I used to actually teach and live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, not far from Bartlesville, so that closing piece connected with closely. And yeah, so I want to share my gratitude.
Between OU and OSU.
Yeah, exactly. I work at Notre Dame, so I kind of navigate all three of those.
I, let me just point out that my oldest daughter went to St. Mary's,
Oh, awesome. Oh, that's wonderful.
which is
Yeah,
basically on the campus. The bus goes back and
exactly.
forth.
Exactly. Spend a lot of time there. Spend a lot. My wife and I go to mass there. So I'm
And
so
I told
grateful
her,
for really grateful for, I mean, again, just another panelist with so much knowledge and passion. And I'm really grateful for all the people on this call. There are a number today, and there have been a number of different folks, some who've been at all four, others who've been to some. I know this summer is such a time that we hope our educators, teachers, and leaders get a rest and a breather. And also, so we're so moved when they show enthusiasm for things like this. So just know to our educators and families, we're praying for you that it's a restful summer and a really spiritual enriching one. And glad that this type of formation effort was part of that. And like I said before, and I want to echo again, Felicitas has just really been an amazing partners in this, along with Father Mike Carson as well. But the two of you, but Felicitas really in facilitating and leading a conversation and bringing this all together. Your passion for this and knowledge and commitment is so important. And I think we're just kind of getting started on what some partnerships can look like between you and your team, as well as Father Mike and his office. So just a lot of gratitude. And like we said, I think more than anything, excitement for further partnership that's more than anything going to benefit schools and families in really profound ways.
that sounds
Yeah, no,
great.
absolutely. Yeah. Thanks so much, Will. This is so great. It's been such a pleasure. And this is just the getting started, right? This is like the pregame to so many other campaigns and webinars we're going to have. And I'm looking forward to it. So again, thanks so much. I'll have this recording posted. So for those that didn't get to join in, we'll send it to the emails as well. But yeah, thanks so much. Have a good
Thank you for what you do.
weekend. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Robert. You as well.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Be safe. God
everyone.
bless.
Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.